Hi everyone, welcome to the Dallas Residents Council District 2 Candidate Forum. My name is Crispin Lawson. I'm the current chair of the Downtown Residents Council. If you don't know what the Downtown Residents Council is, we're a volunteer group of downtown residents who are working together to try to improve the quality of life downtown, working on various civic issues, trying to build community ties, and also providing civic education to residents. And this event is obviously part of that last group. We tend to put these forums on every city council election cycle. This is the first year that we've had to do it virtually, but we're happy to be able to do so. And we have 4 of the 5 candidates here. We have Radha Asadi, Jennifer Cortez, Jesse Moreno, and Dr. Sana Said. We hope to have Michael Fetzer arrive here shortly. He confirmed, but he seems to be running a little bit late. And we also have a very good moderator here tonight who has some moderator experience now from having done our District 14 forum last week. But before that, he had many years of experience as a motivational keynote speaker for many major corporations around the world. He's a New York Times best-selling author, written 7 books, and he's also a former Olympic athlete. His name is Vince Pacenti, and we are very happy to have him here. And I'm going to turn it over to him to run the forum.
All right, I'd like to welcome all the candidates for District 2 for a May 1st election. This is a nonpartisan position, and I'd like to actually point out that all candidates are vaccinated and also socially distanced. So we are, we're just extra safe around here, aren't we? There are a few rules: no kicking, no biting, no scratching. Okay. So once we get those rules out of the way, we're going to have some fun. Make sure that we walk through this. We're going to rotate and make sure everybody has a turn. And because there are no candidates here that are incumbents, we're just going to stay in that rotation. You may be tempted to refute something somebody says. You can do that if you are attacked, meaning if your character is put in question, then you can defend yourself. We are going to end after at the 8:30 Central Time. Today's date is April 19th, 2021, and we are going to start faces, and so when we go to the answer, we can put that up at least, you know, so you don't have to look at me the whole time, is really what I'm asking. So. All right, so the first question, we're going to go in alphabetical order and then rotate through. And no, we're not. We're going to go in this.
Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
yeah.
We're just going to go in order
Yeah.
of the way you're sitting in here, and I don't think anybody's feelings are going to be hurt.
Yeah.
If they are, I mean, seriously. So, anyway, we're going to start with Michael Fetzer. And Michael, the first question is just introduce yourself and why you're running. So, Michael.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys for hosting this and giving us the time to engage with the voters, and we really appreciate the opportunity. So, my name is Michael Fetzer, and I am running here in District 2 because I've lived in the city of Dallas for going on about 6 years now. I've been here my entire adult and professional life, and I just love the city of Dallas. And so, you know, as I mentioned, have been here for a little over, going on 6 years now, and so I wasn't born in Texas, but, you know, I got here as soon as I could, and I mentioned that to say that I was actually born right outside the city of Chicago, and so I left Chicago for Texas for the better state economy and the just inherent Dallas, Texas values, and so when I got here, I was very concerned with the direction that the city was going in terms of our rising crime, and it reminded me a lot of the things I had seen in Chicago and why I left Chicago. And so to be candid with you, I love this city. I'm only 27 years old. If elected, I will be the youngest city councilman in the history of Dallas. And I do not want to see Dallas turn into another Chicago in terms of the crime and corruption. And so what really got me involved, I've been involved as a volunteer ever since I got here, whether it's been with the North Texas Food Bank during the winter storm, did a lot of work with Our Calling, Dallas Pets Alive. I've even founded and am currently the chairman of a community crime watch that's registered with the National Sheriff's Association. And so I've always been invested in the community ever since being here, but about 3 months ago at 1:30 in the morning, 5 gunshots go off 2 doors down from where I'm staying, and It took the police over a half hour to respond. Once they did finally arrive on the scene, everyone starts coming out, and we see these two people that had lived in our neighborhood for a long time get carried out all bloodied up and covered in stretchers, and it had this profound impact on our community. And so everyone always, never thinks anything's going to happen to them until it does, and so that moment with the impact it had on our community was my call to action to start my campaign here in District 2.
Great, thank you, Mr. Fetzer. We're going next to Raha Asadi.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and why you're running.
Thank you. First, thank you to the Downtown Residents Council for having us. I really appreciate it. I know it takes a lot of time to organize. My name is Raha Asadi. I'm running for Dallas City Council to represent District 2. I am running because I believe that while we're all born equal, the resources and the opportunities and the privileges that we're given in life are not. And that is increasingly becoming the case in District 2. I am a first-generation Iranian American. My parents immigrated from Iran during the Iranian Revolution, and so I've seen and lived firsthand, the experience of minorities and immigrant communities. And we're seeing right now kind of an increasing gap in the service that we're giving to the immigrant and minority communities. Statistically and historically, their voices have not been heard. They've been underserved, they've been underrepresented, and frankly, they've been neglected. So that's why I decided to run. As my background, I am a labor and employment attorney. I graduated law school in 2017, so I'm going on my 4th year of practice. And after talking with several current city council members, I've really come to understand that what we need on city council is someone who has the skills of a litigator, the ability to negotiate, build consensus, move productively in the face of adverse interests, and working with opposing counsel and opposing parties every day, all while abiding by a judge's orders, really gives you the skills that you need to navigate. And what we've seen in the last few years are 14 city council members who are working on really tough issues. I fully recognize and appreciate that, but the ability for them to kind of work together has really fallen by the wayside. We've seen a lot of just polarization in city council, and for that reason, it's become a little less productive than I think it should be. We've seen homelessness rates increase, we've seen crime increase, and that's not for nothing. It's a complete lack of productivity that we're seeing in city council, and so I think we really need someone who can work productively in the face of adverse interests, who has been trained to do it, who does it every day, and I would be really proud to represent District 2.
Thank you very much. All right, next up we've got Jennifer Cortez. Introduce yourself and tell us why you're running.
Sure, so thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Cortez. I'm running for Dallas City Council District 2. I am a community advocate. I also do public-private partnerships for a living, and I'm 34 years old. I have been working in this community for more than 15 years. When I first did this, I was an immigrant activist. I started the North Texas Dream Team, which is the first nonprofit I started, but also the first undocumented student movement. We then connected nationally to create a movement called United We Dream, and took the DREAM Act and immigration reform to the White House. I got to be on the tables when we were trying to pass DACA and those other monumental moments. And then I was able to create a career connecting corporate-private funds and public funds, and creating solutions that involve cohesion and coalition building. And I have been doing that work, like I said, for over 15 years now, and it was in the wake of this storm and in the wake of a pandemic that I really realized that change isn't coming, and we need change, we need versatility, and we need people that'll listen. We need real conversations that happen. In the pandemic, I was able to, with nonprofits and with mutual aid groups, feed over 1 million meals. We did over 8 million masks, and we did thousands of resources and books to students that are going to Dallas ISD schools in District 2. And I was able to make that connection. When the storm happened, we were the only ones that stopped our campaign completely to deliver more than 30,000 meals and over 300,000 gallons of water. And the main point about all that was the fact that we are the emergency relief. And we need the resources in the city, and we need the city hall to connect with the community so that those needs can be met. When I ended up getting COVID myself, I realized that this is more than that I have the privilege to run for office, and I have the privilege to have financial stability, that it is my duty to do something, because all I could think of was the mothers that were adding milk to the water, and all the families that were really suffering. And I had said, I need to stand up, I need to change the conversation so we can start listening to each other better and create unity in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cortez. All right. Next up, we're going to have Jesse Moreno. Jesse, please introduce yourself and let us know why you're running.
Good evening, and thank you all for having us this night. My name is Jesse Moreno. I'm a third generation Dallasite. I'm a small business owner here at Dallas Farmers Market. I am a husband, I am a father. I'm running for the city of Dallas because I love Dallas, and Dallas has been good to me and my family. From when my grandfather first immigrated from Mexico, finding his first job at the local high school where I would later graduate from, to where my father having the opportunity to become a business owner. And now my wife and I are raising our daughter here in District 2 in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. I'm running for the city of Dallas because I have over 20 years of public commitment service to the city of Dallas. Since I was a teenager at Woodrow Wilson High School, where I served on the Dallas Youth Commission, serving on policy decision boards, serving on the DISC Youth Commission appointed by then trustee Ron Price. Between now and then, I've served on a number of boards and commissions from the bond committees, where the 2017 bond, allocating bonds for the Complete Street projects coming through Deep Ellum. The DISD redistricting committee, that's going to be a very important conversation, where districts 2 and 14 go from one block to the next. Most recently, I've had the privilege of serving as vice chairman for the Dallas Park Board. So the master plans for the downtown parks is something that I was heavily involved with. I'm running because I am the only candidate with the commitment and service to the city of Dallas. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be part of making my city better. Got involved at an early age because I knew it was important to embrace our city as youth rather than inheriting it as adults.
Thank you very much. And then Dr. Sana Syed, please introduce yourself and why you're running.
Absolutely. Thank you again to the Dallas Residents Council, Downtown Residents Council, for hosting us tonight and bringing us all together in person for this event. So I'm a former news anchor reporter. I worked here in this market for Fox 4 and CBS 11, and I eventually left television and made my way into a spokesperson role for the city of Dallas. So I was there for a few years, oversaw a lot of crises, including the Ebola crisis, flooding, ice storms, and July 7th when 5 officers were killed. I eventually left the city of Dallas, finished my doctorate in urban planning and public policy, and went into commercial real estate multifamily, where I oversee outreach for the firm. And I have my own nonprofit called Kimya International. So Kimya was created to raise awareness about people who are making a difference in the world, and we do documentary films on human rights issues. So our first film was in Cambodia, where we covered a couple from the United States that moved there to transition young girls out of brothels. Our current film is in Jordan on the Syrian refugee crisis. And the film we have slated to begin after that is focused on 75216, which is the most incarcerated zip code in the state of Texas. Last year, we became a part of the United Way Social Innovation Accelerator Program, and that essentially is an incubator program for nonprofits and programs that serve the North Texas community in key areas. And we received the grant funding to launch Fight Club, which is a 14-week program where we combine boxing, yoga, and therapy for women who are survivors of trauma. And in our first cohort, we were able to see that we moved the needle in addressing depression, anxiety, and self-esteem, and saw improvements in all 3 areas with our first cohort. So that's still a program that we have in the works, and we also have clients that come to us from nonprofits. So we make sure that we're inclusive and serving different socioeconomic backgrounds. I am running because while I was a reporter at CBS 11, I was actually in the process of leaving an abusive marriage. And Dallas is where I came to start my life over. And so when I came here, I fell in love with this city, especially serving as spokesperson. But I also saw a lot of need and opportunity, particularly in addressing the issues that plague our streets, that are hurting our homeless population that continues to go unaddressed. And I'm really tired of the infighting on council. It sets a really bad record when others are coming to us to call Dallas home or to start a business here. But more than anything, it becomes a a barrier to getting things done. So I have proposed that we put a trauma-informed public safety model in place that addresses the re-traumatization of individuals, particularly youth, and also addresses secondary trauma for police and fire, and address homelessness by bringing back public health to the city of Dallas, so we address mental and behavioral health and substance abuse.
Right on time. There you go. We had a countdown happening. We're going to start our question.
Can I get a blanket or something? Just kidding.
All right, so we're going to start on the topic of safety, and for this debate, what we did was we reached out through the Downtown Residents Council, and we wanted to get a sense for the kind of questions that our voters had. So they may seem somewhat granular, but there are questions that came in, and we'd love to hear your answers to these. So we are going to rotate and have the same question answered by each of you. There's 5 candidates, so good luck with that. coming up with something new. So anyway, here we go with safety. What are your proposals for addressing the security concerns of downtown residents? Violence seems to be up, and the problems with aggressive panhandlers, car break-ins, and street racing are well known. So if we could start with Raha, what's your answer to that inquiry?
Yes. So the issue of public safety, it really falls, for better or worse, on the head of the Dallas Police Department. And what we've seen is a police department that is oftentimes not given the resources that it needs. In order to have a safer community, we need to be doing a better job. And what I have proposed is total and complete police reform in terms of refocusing from, we've heard a lot about, cutting police budgets, defunding the police, and while people are so focused on financial resources, I think people kind of forget that human resources is just as important, if not more important. As a labor and employment attorney, a million questions come to mind. How are we hiring police officers? How are we training police officers? Are we retraining them? What sort of anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion training are we requiring? And I don't think this is anything novel or new. I work every day in advising my clients that are private entities on how to maintain ethical business practices, and we just need to take some notes from the private sector. We need to make sure that that we're getting the maximum return on our investment in terms of police officers. There's absolutely no reason we need to be hiring more police officers if every police officer is operating at 40%. And again, this isn't any one person's fault, but it's just the human resources issue has just fallen by the wayside. So until we're able to make sure that we can monitor police officers' output and performance and address it when it's not right, there's no reason for us to be spending more money or hiring more police officers. We need to make sure that our police officers are working at 100% productivity, given the resources that they need, and by resources I mean training, retraining, and anti-racism procedure. And it's not until then that we should, I like to use the kind of analogy of squeezing the lemon before you cut a new one. We need to squeeze the lemon and make sure we're getting full return on our investment before we invest in more police officers. And with that, I will also add how we're staffing police officers. And I'll give you an example. I walked here from my office building in downtown, where there is at any given time 2 to 3 police officers in the lobby at any time. And for the most part, this office building is still closed for the pandemic, and so there's really no one in that lobby at any time. And the fact that we're putting 2 to 3 police officers there and not restaffing them in other places that are more high traffic, that are more prone to dangerous situations, it's just a lack of looking at the system and seeing, okay, how do we look at this and how do we revamp it and improve it? So.
Thank you, Raha. That's fantastic. Do you remember the question, or would you like me to rephrase it?
Well, I wrote it down, so I said
There we go.
Because I'll get lost in it. But so addressing security concerns. So I think I know that Dallas, more than a crime issue, we have a poverty issue. And if we were to start innovating and reimagining public safety in a way, in a holistic way, that really puts more people at the table to discuss these issues and to have these real conversations, and we'd be able to come up with better solutions beyond just training, beyond just looking, putting a Band-Aid over an issue or more police, that there are holistic approaches and holistic ways to look at this. Deprioritization, 13%, only 13% of people in Lucero right now in the jail are violent offenders, because we prioritize, even with because we need to deprioritize low offense crimes. Haven't done that completely. Even when we do that, we need to make sure we enforce those types of ordinances. As recently, Dwight Wright, who was in Minneapolis, was shot and killed by a police officer in a city that had deprioritized low offense crimes, but was not enforcing at the level it needed to be enforced. My neighbor, one of the reasons I'm also here today, was Brooklyn John. He was shot in his home, right down the hall from me. Back when that happened, I was called to testify in that case, and that's part of the reason I'm here. We continue to decriminalize poverty instead of looking and bringing people at the table to have conversations that can create real solutions and to think of things in an innovative way. Car break-ins, I know that you mentioned. My car's been broken before. And panhandlers. I think when you're looking, again, this is a poverty issue. People are doing these things because they do not have resources, and if we were to have a secure community, a resource community, then that community would be secure. But if we do not address poverty, we cannot start to address crime. As far as the street racing goes, last week I actually met with one of the street racers, me and two of the other candidates, and we talked with them. We said, what is it that'll stop y'all doing this? Because as they sent an email to all of the city council members, but nobody answered, they couldn't get in, and we said, why isn't anyone just having a conversation with you guys? And we looked at things that Detroit had done, the things that Los Angeles has done, where they've created areas for them to do this, and it's just talking about this and really coming up with solutions. And so when we're looking at security and we're looking at public safety, that's really where it starts. And there is a way that we can be innovative, there is a way that Dallas can change.
Thank you. All right, Jesse Moreno, you're up.
Thank you. So public safety is very important to me. Someone with a young family, when I'm not home, my wife and my daughter are at home, I want to make sure that police are going to be responding in adequate time. I want to make sure that our officers have the necessary tools and resources to keep our streets safe. That means having the best equipment possible, new vehicles, new technology. At the same time, we must hold them accountable for any misuse of force or overuse of force. The way we do that is by being innovative. When I was on the Dallas Park Board, I was spearheaded the park ranger program, making sure that our officers, DPD, were not the sole responsibility to respond to a call like someone drinking at a park or someone sleeping at a park, someone smoking at a park. And we need to do more. We need to help our officers. So putting programs like the Right Care program in place, dealing with the homeless issues, dealing with the mental health issues, working with the Deep Ellum Foundation like I have for the past 8 years, working with DDI with their initiative on innovative in bringing the app where people can get safe rides from their home to a nearby bar or vice versa. My community also is part of the EMP program, which is the Enhanced Neighborhood Patrol. So I believe there's also opportunity for public-private partnerships to offset some of the shortfalls that we're going to have financially to meet our obligations. And then we have our officers of, what's the right number? There's a lot of discussion with the KPMG studies I'm really excited that we have a new police chief coming into town, new ideas, new perspectives. Street racing is very important, and that's why I'm excited that Mayor Pro Tem Medrano, who is endorsing me, has committed millions of dollars for our complete street projects, narrowing our streets to prevent just that, to prevent the drag racing that's happening in the downtown area.
Thank you. Dr. Sonia Syed, you're up next.
Could you repeat your question, please?
Oh, yeah. It's
been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. What are your proposals for addressing the security concerns of the downtown residents? Violence seems to be up, and the problems with aggressive panhandlers, car break-ins, and street racing are well known.
Yeah, I live in Farmers Market, so not far from here.
Oh, yeah.
And I will tell you that, some of the candidates here have actually brought up really important points, right? So when we talk about holistic approach to addressing crime in our community, last year when the defund vote happened, I hate that word because it's just become so political and weaponized, but essentially we're talking about, police losing $7 million in overtime. Council then came back around, reallocated funds in different line items, but that vote still sent a message to police officers, and it still sent a message to our community. Back in 2016, it was our summer of death. We had July 7th, we had 5 officers who were killed on our streets. I went to 5 funerals in 3 weeks, and I was not alone in that. So to go from holding hands with complete strangers in Thanksgiving Square to a few years later, and we're talking about this defund vote, which kind of was a defund, but not really, it more than anything just sent a message. So now where we are is we have so much of the city's budget, majority of the city's budget, more than half of the city's budget goes toward public safety. So we are going to utilize public safety to address mental health issues. And police don't want to police mental health and homelessness. That's not their role in our community. So in addressing crime, we've seen crime go up in all 3 areas. We had 12 murders in the past 9 days. So there's absolutely no denying that crime is going up. But we're also down 800 officers. And after what happened last year, the budget's there to hire more, and we can't hire them. So, what's really important is bringing people to the table, not alienating anyone, but every police officer I have spoken to wants to be a part of the solution. So I spoke with the Dallas Police Association, the Fire Association. I have both of their endorsements. I told them about the trauma-informed public safety model. The Dallas Morning News also gave a nod to it in their recommendation for me for this race, and that is what I was just talking about. It's addressing racial healing in our community, and it's also addressing secondary trauma for police and fire. That helps that piece. Now, in addition to that, if we bring back public health under the city's purview, right, then we're allowing some amount of resources to be able to address mental behavioral health, substance abuse, and homelessness. So we are currently putting a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid in this city, right, because we don't want to take accountability. But the reality is we're still left holding the bag because these are still our issues in our city. So the answer to this is stepping up, filling the gaps, making the police department whole, addressing racial healing, and creating inclusive policies where we bring people to the table to address crime in our community. But the most important issue right now is making our community whole on police, and also finding a way to address substance abuse, mental and behavioral health.
Great, thank you. And finally, Michael Fetzer. Remember the question?
Give it to me one more time.
Yeah, one more time. What are your proposals for addressing security concerns of the downtown residents? Violence seems to be up, and the problems with aggressive panhandlers, car break-ins, and street racing are well known.
Perfect. So, public safety, in my opinion, is, it's the biggest part of my platform, first of all, and I believe that a city's prosperity starts and stops with its public safety. So the simple answer is we need to make sure that our officers and our first responders have the funds and the resources that they need to be able to work effectively. Just to give you some numbers, crime and violent crime is on the rise. In 2020, we had 253 homicides, which was a 23% increase from 2019. As most of everyone knows, 2019 was our highest crime rate in the city of Dallas since I believe about 1998. So, when you look at it, we're already on pace in 2021 with the current homicide rate that we have to exceed 2020. And, there is a laundry list of issues that go into that, but at the end of the day, we just need to make sure that they have their funding, because not only do we have a problem with anywhere between 500 to 1,000 officers short here in Dallas, our call center, our 911 call center, a priority 1 call, which is the highest rated call, active shooting, murder, etc., the response time is just under 10 minutes. So, when you think about your life being on the line and officers at best 10 minutes away, that's a scary thought for everybody. It's simple because nobody wants to live in a neighborhood or open up a small business in an area that they do not feel safe. It's also an issue of equity, right? Because of those 253 homicides that we had here in Dallas last year, 218 of those victims were minority members of our community. Everybody likes to talk about the criminal, but not everybody likes to talk about the victim, and I think that's something that we need to start talking about. I agree with what some of the other candidates have said in terms of the mental health and panhandling issues that we have. That's a multi-pronged approach and something that a normal officer is not equipped to handle by themselves. And so yes, there are things that we need to do in terms of restructuring, but reallocating, defunding, diverting resources from our police department is something that I am staunchly against, do not support. I believe that I am the biggest supporter of public safety running in this race, and it is the biggest part of my platform. In addition to what we already have in terms of our resources, we need to start addressing cyber crime here in Dallas. That is a big part, and most importantly, human trafficking. We can talk about homicides and violent crimes, which are obviously very important, but another big passion of mine is the human trafficking pandemic that we have going on in Dallas. We are one of the largest cities in the country that have the human trafficking issue. On average, about 400 people are trafficked, whether it's drugs, sex, labor trafficked in our city every single day. It is a $99 million industry in Dallas alone, and so public safety is extremely important to me.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question, and Jennifer Cortez, you're going to be next, so put your seatbelt on. Here we go. Do you believe Dallas has a problem with police violence against minorities? If so, can it be solved?
I do. I mean, if you look, I think it's a targeting issue. Like I said, I did many years also working with the migrant community, and there was a time where I myself had been pulled over, and that's right north of in North Dallas. So I definitely do believe there's a targeting issue. There's also a lens, people and the government and police themselves want to try to meet a community where they think it is instead of where it actually is. And that's why we need more voices. That's why we need change, and we need a holistic approach to these types of things. Can it be solved in Dallas? I definitely think it can. I think Dallas, to be honest, if we're going to talk real, is still in many ways segregated, and is still in many ways targeted against mainly brown and black communities. You can see that in the way lines are cut, but you also see that in the way the numbers come out when you see who's arrested, who has been killed. There was a time during the summer that we named a list of hundreds and hundreds of people that were killed by police since 1970, which started off in 1973 with Santos Rodriguez. That list that we made, there was more that came before then. And if you look at the Santos Rodriguez case, which was something that also happened in Little Mexico, here what would have been District 2 back then, you would see something very similar that you can see happening today. And for it to have been over 40 years and to still be looking at the same thing, yes, we still do have an issue. But if we as Dallas being a very money-centric, still everything kind of under the radar, under the veil, if we as Dallas could solve this, I really think more so, and we've sat on different public safety forums and stuff nationally in none of the roles that I'm at, and people always talk about other cities, but if Dallas could solve it, I really feel like it could really be the example for the rest of the nation, and we can do it here. It's just that you have to open in bureaucracy and open the doors to people that are willing to have those conversations, and the people that understand the other side, that can bring the right people in because they've been with them. So I definitely, yes, I think we can do it. I just think we have to stop barriers and stop the closing of doors. There are 97% of the district that don't vote that need to be heard, including our migrant population, who has a real fear against police, a real fear against that, because as some of the cases even during COVID that we're working with, people were put into deportation proceedings during COVID, and the mother that did that, we put her in a safe house. We fought for her to get out of detention, and when she returned, she had COVID. And this is a real thing that happens that most people don't see in the city because they're not on the ground working with them. But if we could open those doors, we could solve it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jesse Moreno, coming with a question?
Please repeat.
All right. So, do you believe Dallas has a problem with police violence against minorities? If so, how can it be solved?
Sure. So, we can go back to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And since that day, Dallas has been labeled the city of hate. And so with the new police chief, I'm hopeful that our community policing will be relaunched, reimagined, and having our officers with the programs that are in there through the park department, with the Palace program, having our officers playing basketball in the community with the kids, Those are the ways we start building the bridges between the community and our police officers. But it's not just that. It's in the LGBTQ plus community as well, where we're seeing the murders of, in particular, black trans women here in Dallas. That's something that we also have to work diligently with. And then when police creates those liaisons with the LGBTQ plus community, those are the way we tackle those problems. And that's the way we erase the image of Dallas being the city of hate.
Thank you. Dr. Sonia Sayed, you're up. Would you like me to repeat the question?
So it's about social justice, essentially. Yeah, we're talking about social justice and systemic racism. And yes, we absolutely have systemic injustices toward the minority people, toward the black community. And, you know, so when I talk about addressing trauma in the community, that's a lot of what this is about. You know, there's a black historian who actually works at a PTA, and he wrote a book about Dallas's past, and there was a black man who was arrested, and this is decades ago, maybe in the 50s or 60s, and he was arrested and was taken to jail in downtown Dallas, and was waiting to see a judge, and before that could happen, a mob showed up and broke him out of jail and dragged him through the streets of Dallas and killed him and handed out pieces of his skin and clothing as souvenirs. So this was not that long ago, right? And so we have a past that we have to reckon with. There's absolutely no denying that. Now, I will tell you that there's some amazing, amazing leaders in this community that are trying to change that. From City Square, John Seibert at City Square, to Elise Waters at the Lone Star Justice Alliance, to for Oak Cliff, doing amazing things, because 75216, which is in Oak Cliff in the city of Dallas, is one of the most incarcerated zip codes in the state of Texas. So when you talk to the minority community, to the black community, they're ready, they've been ready to not only have that racial healing, but policy that's reflective of that. Now, when you talk to police officers, I have yet to talk to one Dallas police officer who does not want to do the same thing. And they're acknowledging that there are systemic injustices and they want to be a part of the solution. So that's when I'm referring to holistic solution and inclusion and bringing everyone to the table, we have to have that. Because if everyone is there, then it's vested, and then we're working as a unit to make that happen. So there's this whole concept of a trauma-informed public safety model. The idea here is we create space for healing, right? Because the model that actually exists already in parts of the United States that I'd like to borrow from, what they're doing is they're training officers in identifying symptoms of trauma in the community. So, you know, it's a little separate from mental health and the Right Care program, which is doing a lot of good, but it's only being implemented in a small part of the city, right? So the rest of the city could really benefit from that, but it has not yet. So when we're addressing trauma in the community, I think that is a major step in saying that we are working toward addressing systemic injustices and social justice in our community, but together as a community.
Thank you. All right, Michael Fetzer, would you like me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay, so do you believe Dallas has a problem with police violence against minorities? If so, how can it be solved?
Sure. So I do not believe that currently in 2021 any Dallas police officer is intentionally targeting or racially profiling any one individual. Do we have a lot of crime that takes place in our minority neighborhoods? Absolutely. In fact, our minority and low-income neighborhoods are about 4 times more likely to endure these violent crimes that happen in our city. So, as I've been campaigning and having the pleasure to speak with thousands of residents and voters here in our district, a lot of them being minority, a lot of them do want more police presence in their neighborhoods and feel that they aren't getting a lot of police presence in their neighborhood, and that is what is eventually leading to a lot of this crime. If, criminals know that officers aren't patrolling those areas, well, why wouldn't they, perform their illegal activities in those areas? It only makes sense. I mean, a lot of these criminals aren't dumb, and so It goes back, yes, do we acknowledge that in the past there have been racial injustices? Absolutely. And those officers that we currently have, if there are things that happen, do need to be held accountable. There's bad apples in every group. So whether you're talking about police officers, doctors, teachers, you name it, yes, you're always going to have your bad apples, and those people do need to be held accountable. There's no code of silence or free pass for any of them. We need to make sure there's transparency in that process. But the narrative that our police department is intentionally targeting any one group of individuals, I don't subscribe to that idea at all. And in fact, I agree with Mr. Moreno's comment about community police forcing, our neighborhood patrol officers, our community. That is how you bridge the divide or misconceived preconception that there is a, targeting or racial disparity going on within the police department. If we do get our police department staff to the level that it needs to be, we can eventually get back to that community policing model where there is someone regularly patrolling these neighborhoods, a familiar face in the neighborhood, whether it's, playing basketball, playing football with the community. And I think that's where we really need to be focusing our attention.
Thank you. And here we are. Raha Asadi, you're the last one for this. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, could you repeat it, please?
Yeah. So where did it go? Do you believe Dallas has a problem with police violence against minorities? If so, how can it be solved?
Unequivocally, yes. Dallas has a problem and has had a problem with disproportionately targeting minority communities. How do I know that? Well, for one, I've had the pleasure of speaking with thousands of people in this district. I'll give you an example. I have friends in a neighborhood who have been in this neighborhood for 55 years. It's an older black couple. And they're telling me they have not lived in a city where they have not experienced racism by the police. And aside from that, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with the Black Police Association of Greater Dallas, whose endorsement I've proudly received. The conversation that we had was very real, in the spirit of realness. Dallas has not addressed its history. It has not addressed its past of white supremacy and intentional racism. It's not just in the criminal justice system. It's not just in housing. It is at a foundation, part of the history of Dallas, and we have not addressed it as a city. So how are we going to not disproportionately target minority communities and have them receive the short end of the stick when, as a city, we can't even address it? And I would argue that's why I received the endorsement. The Black Police Association told me, you are the first and only candidate who has actually acknowledged the racist history of this city. And the reason that we have a Black Police Association is because 46 years ago, they organized collectively despite the fact that they were told not to, because they were receiving unequal treatment as police officers. So if the police force is experiencing that, then there's no doubt that it's happening in the community. And just like Jennifer said, minority communities are afraid. And I would really, really encourage everyone to find a neighbor of yours who's Black, find a neighbor of yours who's Hispanic, and have an honest conversation with them. Because, and I admit, I am white passing, and I don't experience the level of racism by police that my friends do. So I really encourage us to have the conversation, not be afraid to talk about it anymore. I think the reason I had such a productive conversation with the Black Police Association was because I was not afraid to hold back. And we need to address it as a city. That is the first thing that we need to do in order to alleviate it. And if you still don't believe me, go look at Lou Sterrett. Go look at how many people who are currently incarcerated, how many of them are Black and brown. The Black and brown communities in Dallas are, to this day, 2021, being disproportionately targeted, and there is continued violence against them.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the third question. We are past the halfway point. Well, actually, we're approaching 35 minutes or so. We may go a few minutes over time because we had some technical difficulties, but we'll get through as many questions as we can. The next one directed towards, we're going to start the rotation, Jesse Moreno, and this is what deficiencies do you see in downtown's walkability and how can those deficiencies be addressed?
Sure. So, Dallas is a car-centric city. Dallas was built as a regionalism city to get people in and out of downtown as quickly as possible. This is right up my alley. As being a former member of the park board, that's what I did, exactly that, connecting people, connecting trails, connecting parks to our trails, and that's what I'll continue to doing. And the way we do that is by allocating more funds to our complete street projects. We're going to have 2 of those in here in Deep Ellum. District 2 has the most bike lanes through Victory Park, through the Cedars to Farmers Market. And with all the exciting projects that are happening in the fast developing Cedars, we're going to need more green spaces. I'm excited I've had multiple conversations with developers for the So Good project and the Park Place project, and building those deck projects to connect the southern side of the city of Dallas to downtown. We need to bring in technology like the Hawk lights, which signal when a pedestrian is approaching 15 feet away. That way, that by the time they hit that intersection, that light flips. It now allows the pedestrian to go without having to pause, without having to wait. And obviously, something that I'm sure we're going to have many of conversations in the upcoming months or year is the potential of having the scooters re-entered into the downtown system. I know that was a hot issue because we didn't have the regulations in place to keep both people safe. And so we need more crosswalks. We need to just really change the mindset of people should not have to stop for vehicles. Vehicles should always be yielding to the pedestrians, and that's how we build a safer, more walkable city of Dallas. I live in Peaks Edition, which is abuts to Deep Ellum, and my wife and I, we enjoy being able to walk from our house to Deep Ellum for dinner and getting back home. So it doesn't stop at the intersections. We need to make sure that lights are in place, and then we need to work with DART. DART is again built as a regional system, and we need to be able to get people through shuttles, through streetcars, through the Frog that's here in downtown, and through the Arts District. Something as simple as a golf cart to move people from point A to point B. And so this is something that, as a small business owner, I want to make sure that people can get to and from their home to the entertainment districts.
Thank you. Dr. Sonia Syed, would you like the question again? Yeah, I'm just going to do the question, and then you guys go. Okay, what deficiencies do you see in downtown's walkability, and how can those deficiencies be addressed?
So one of the things that you'll notice if you walk through this district is we have a huge issue with our sidewalks. Simple thing like a sidewalk. So we have neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, neighborhoods that have sidewalks, but they're so broken you can't walk on them. Downtown specifically, one of the biggest issues it faces is that when there's construction, they pull into the road, and then there's no way to safely get around that construction. So I think there has to be some kind of mandatory policy put in place that anytime you see construction going into the road and taking over a sidewalk or a place where someone could walk their dog, we're putting people in harm's way by pushing them to walk outside of that. Now, I completely agree, right, with what Jesse just said. We planned for cars for decades, and we're paying a price for that now. The great thing is that overwhelmingly the momentum is there to be a more walkable city. So that is going to, I think, what I'd like to see is a sense of urgency from City Hall to see us actually push forth the ability for people to walk to restaurants and shops and safely get across the road. So I think that we're definitely falling short. We're still a city that was planned for cars, and I think creating safe ways for bikes to get around, the construction that's happened in Farmers Market and Deep Ellum, a lot of the bike lane separation. Of course, I don't know what they're called. The things that separate the drivers from the cyclists. So those were removed and they were never put back in. So that's the thing, right, is that if we want our city to be more pedestrian friendly, we have to be sensitive to that. We have to be careful of all this construction that is happening, create some kind of walkway around that so people can safely walk their dogs and get to where they want to go. Because people are here, I live in Farmers Market because I want to walk and get everywhere easy. I don't want to get in my car anymore. And so we have to do right by the residents who have picked these neighborhoods to be able to walk to where they want to go.
Thank you. All right, back in the rotation, Michael Fetzer. The question is, what deficiencies do you see in downtown's walkability, and how can those deficiencies be addressed?
Absolutely. So I think that increasing walkability and promoting more micro-mobility forms of transportation, whether it's bicycling, scootering, etc., is very, very important here in Dallas. So one of the biggest deficiencies that I personally see is with our current parking regulations. Our city code compliance states that for every 1,000 square feet of commercial property that we have 3 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet. So, they've done a lot of studies where it shows even at peak hours of the day where most of these parking lots should be occupied, only about 70 to 65% of it is occupied. So we have a lot of unnecessary space that's being used here in downtown for these parking spaces that aren't being utilized. As everyone else has mentioned, we've been very focused in our city planning in terms of development with our infrastructure as cars being the main form of transportation, which there's nothing wrong with using a car to get around, but we definitely need to make sure that we are keeping areas of Dallas, especially downtown, where people do live here specifically for the commutability and walkability, that we're working not only with the city to reduce those parking requirements, but also working with our private sectors and businesses here in Dallas to initiate programs to help promote more walkability or use of bicycle lanes. I mean, here in Dallas we only have about 50 miles worth of disconjointed bike lanes, and so that's something else I would like to see improved upon as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, so same question. What deficiencies do you see in downtown's walkability, and how can those deficiencies be addressed? Raha Asadi.
So I think the other candidates bring up great points, but one thing I just did not hear was the most glaring issue, and the reason I know this is because I may live in Oaklawn, my home is in Oaklawn, but let's be real, I spend all my time in my office in downtown, and I spend a lot of time walking in downtown. The most glaring issue is the fact that oftentimes, we have a lot of improvement in terms of walkways and walkability and mobility. We have the AT&T Discovery District, the Arts District that's been, up and on the up and up, and so it's not necessarily that all the walkways and all the throughways are just terrible. It's that there's a glaring issue and people don't want to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about it. It's the issue that there are homeless people who are kind of strewn all over the walkways and the sidewalks in downtown Dallas, and it makes it so that people are they can't walk, or they're uncomfortable to walk, because the general consensus is that if someone sees a homeless person, they don't want to get near them, and that's understandable, because you don't know how they will react. You don't want to get too close. I mean, just with a stranger. But after talking to thousands of people in this district, including many in downtown, that is their biggest issue, is that they can't walk without running into someone who is sleeping on the sidewalk or seeking shelter in the throughway, and that's just not something that we're addressing, because it's something we're not comfortable talking about, and so that's one thing as city council member I will not be afraid to talk about. Why did we spend $500,000 cleaning out a homeless encampment and throwing away homeless people's belongings and pushing them out, when in reality we could have spent that $500,000 to provide it? I did the number crunching to provide efficiency style housing for 35 to 40 people experiencing homelessness for an entire year. Why are we not using our resources better? We have the resources. We're just not using them in the most optimal way. And so for the neighbors that we have in District 2 who are in downtown, that is by and large the most the most common thing that I hear. And make no mistake, this is not that we don't want to see people experiencing homelessness, that we don't want to deal with them. The problem is that people want them to have adequate shelter and adequate resources that are provided by the city. And that is the most glaring issue in terms of walkability. And you know, my coworkers don't want to go to lunch sometimes because they don't want to have to deal with walking near or over, you know, people who are sleeping on the concrete. And that should not be the case. We should not be forcing people to be sleeping on the street so that we can have, you know, a better downtown that is actually more walkable.
Okay. All right. Next up, Jennifer Cortez. What deficiencies do you see in downtown's walkability, and how can those deficiencies be addressed?
So I did read that at the core of every issue you have in Dallas goes down to poverty. So you have to fight poverty head on. So I do agree with, of course, what Rob was saying as well, that mental homelessness is probably its own topic. So I'm gonna go back to that. As far as walkability goes, so I live in Cedars. I ride my bike and I walk around the streets too. It does. For some people, it's a personal decision, but I mean, I see them as neighbors. We were walking. I was doing my walks and runs even during COVID. I'd bring some help packages and stuff like that for them, and I got to know them. But aside from that, I was just looking at the walkability. I think we have Dallas suffers from a huge mobility issue. So, and when it comes to the micro mobility level, we are a city that has suffered, over in 2020, 167 fatalities for the vehicle related, 59 of them were pedestrian, and this is really something we need to look at. It involves connectivity. Yes, there are a lot of development plans coming in. There are a lot of things happening, but at the same time, it's like why is it that other places in the city have a higher walkability score than even downtown? And how do we address that? How do we start looking at addressing people over parking lots? If you live close to downtown, like a couple, Sana and I do, that there's always people want to come in and they want to visit downtown and they want to park everywhere. But when you're coming downtown, you need to know that the neighborhoods here, we walk everywhere. So we can't have cars and all that we need to have, and we need infrastructure change. Whole infrastructure change, and so that when I'm riding my bike, if I go to one street, I'm going to hit a pothole. It's happened to me before. I'm going to hit a pothole, but then when I go to a different street, then it's straight. And it's like we need to connect this. We need to look at, and there aren't any parks like real green areas here close to downtown, and we need to address that too. We need to address the fact that we kind of get left out here in Cedars, Deep Ellum, and Farmers Market in downtown. We really do kind of get left out, and I think it's because we haven't had somebody in that seat that has that experience of living here in a while. And so since we're part of District 2 also, we need to figure out how we address that. And how do we address that as we look at people who already are part of the system and how we can think of innovative solutions and bring those voices to the table. So walkability. So there's different plans I have, but I think definitely it starts off with infrastructure and connectivity. It starts off at looking at the 2011 bike plan and that was 10 years ago. How do we bring that back in? How do we reallocate budgeting to address those issues and to really enrich the downtown environment we have here and prioritize people in our neighborhoods here over cars. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to jump over to quality of life and Dr. Sonia Syed. This question is, more and more residential high-rises are being constructed in areas that have historically been low density, like the Katy Trail and then Deep Ellum. How is the city going to balance the need for housing with the needs of current residents and the traditional character of those neighborhoods?
Yeah. I think all of us could tell you stories about residents that we're meeting who are really frustrated by that new development and how they are starting to feel like they're living in the shadow of a building. And so I do believe that some development, some gentrification can be good for a community. It can help lift that community up, but not to the detriment of the people who already live there. So I think that we need to do our due diligence in recognizing historic communities. There are families that have lived in certain parts of our city for generations, and while they're not high-rise buildings, some of them are just $43,000 homes next to $1 million homes. So for me, I think the biggest thing is when we talk about especially from a quality of life standpoint, when we're talking about development coming in, there's absolutely a need for housing. And because affordable housing, that is the biggest battle cry of this city. We simply do not have enough by the thousands, tens of thousands. And so, so as we do that, I think my biggest thing is how are we doing our due diligence to the communities that are already surrounding that area and listening. So if they're saying they have concerns about it, then postpone the vote, hold off until you can reconcile that, and then bring that back to the dais.
All right, thank you. All right, Michael Fetzer, same question. I'll read it out loud instead of to myself. Where that came from. Anyway, more and more residential high-rises are being constructed in the areas that historically have been low density, like along the Katy Trail and in Deep Elm. How is the city going to balance the need for housing with the needs of current residents and the traditional character of those neighborhoods?
Absolutely. So, this is a topic that I talk about with, residents here during the campaign all the time. It's one of the most important issues that gets brought up over and over again is how do we balance protecting the integrity and character and traditional neighborhoods and, the history associated with those neighborhoods versus the development that, in a lot of ways is very good for us as a whole in the city because of the added tax base that it brings to our city, the creation of jobs, and just improvement in our economy overall, right? So I believe firmly that we need to, protect and promote home ownership here in Dallas. We wouldn't have the need for as many high-rises if we could get some more apartment dwellers converted into homeowners. And there's a lot of obstacles in that, especially right now with how hot our DFW housing market is. Try being a 27-year-old and buying a house here, let me tell you, it's not easy. There's a lot of things that go into it, but at the end of the day, I think that something that we really have to be talking about is within our Sustainable Development Committee, whether it's our zoning or our permitting. I think our permitting office is a mess. One of the things that I hear commonly is, there's people in whether it's the Elm Thicket, North Park area, the Cedars area, where, they have had their homes paid off the mortgage has been paid off for generations, but because of the development, you have these generational homes that all of a sudden the property value of the neighborhood increases, and so their property taxes obviously go up. Our property taxes here in Dallas County have increased 56% over the last 5 years alone. So when you have that kind of dramatic increase, you have people that are forced with the options of either sell and make a good lump sum of money on your initial investment and move to another area, but you have those people that have such history in that neighborhood that the last thing they want to do is leave. So going back to my promotion and protecting of home ownership, I believe that for first-time home buyers here in Dallas, we should have an initial short-term property tax break for them so that they are able to be able a little more financially incentivized to become a homeowner here in Dallas, and as I mentioned, protecting home ownership. So those multi-generational homes in our more minority-based communities that I'm speaking about, if you are on a fixed income like Social Security or anything like that, one of my proposals would be to, if your property taxes exceed, call it 6-8% of your annual income, then the city of Dallas should defer those property tax payments interest-free until the owner either passes or sells the house or converts it into a rental property. That way the city eventually does get its money, but we're not forcing out these multi-generational historical family and neighborhoods out of the places they've spent the last several decades.
Okay. All right. So Raha Asadi, same question. Where did it go? More and more residential high-rises are being constructed in areas that are historically been low density, like along the Katy Trail and Deep Elm. How is the city going to balance the need for housing with the needs of current residents and the traditional character of those neighborhoods?
Okay, this is a great question, and I love talking about it, and it will be very hard to do it in 3 minutes. So, how do we balance the needs of the community and also promote property development? The city of Dallas, generally speaking, places great importance and priority on property development. They are very, very property developer friendly. What does that mean? That means property developers essentially have an unfettered, unencumbered right to build whenever they want, wherever they want, for however long they want. They have perpetual tax abatements, which are being abused, and ultimately it's causing Black and brown communities, again, common theme, to be priced out of their homes and to have to leave their neighborhoods, the district, and the city altogether. How do we balance this? We need to implement some checks and balances so that property developers are required to pay a certain amount of taxes if they want to build, in a certain neighborhood. And also the issue that I just hear time and time again every day is that. The people tell me, please do something to stop these developers from calling us, sending us letters, harassing us about selling our homes for pennies on the dollar. And it completely ignores the fact that these are the same families, these multi-generational, Mexican-American families, Black families, white families, all kinds of families who are the foundation of the neighborhood. They built the neighborhood, and now they're being forced out. It's just not fair. And so how do we do that? I've proposed the concept of relative valuation, which is an idea that if a developer wants to come into a neighborhood or onto a street and develop a new property, first there should be a little bit more stringent regulations in terms of what properties are allowed to be demolished completely versus just remediated. Is it necessary to completely level the home? Second, property developers should be required to do a certain level of research on the homes around it. And these are just random numbers that I'm throwing out. Let's say there's a street with homes that are valued at $200,000 to $300,000, for example. A property developer should have to do a certain level of research to see that that is the range of home value in that community, in that neighborhood, and they should not be able to exceed that range. They cannot build a home that is $800,000, $900,000 on that street, something that's 3-4 times what it is, because what that does is it causes the property taxes of all of those neighbors to skyrocket. What we've seen in the span of a year, my property taxes have increased so much, and it's alarming to me, and so I can't imagine how alarming it is to someone who has a family and kids. So we need to have these checks and balances in place so that the community is valued a little bit more.
All right, thank you. All right, Jennifer Cortez, same question. More and more residential high-rises are being constructed in areas that historically have been low density, like along the Katy Trail and Deep Ellum. How is the city going to balance the need for housing with the needs of current residents and the traditional character of those neighborhoods?
So this is addressing gentrification almost. Spot on. The definition of gentrification is a process of neighborhood change that includes economic and demographic change in a historically disinvested neighborhood. So exactly what we're talking about. And I will tell you right now that there's no part in District 2 that this does not affect. It is happening every single part of District 2. But since this is the Downtown Residents Council, I do want to address the neighborhoods that are near here. So starting with my own and a story. So in Cedars, where I live, there was a PD that was passed right before the storm, under the radar almost, that the community had no input into. And a resident told me just the other day that it really hit me, and it makes me feel that I'm fighting for a losing battle here in this district, because we have already lost mostly everything, and we're fighting for what crumbs of what's left. And I know a lot of people have addressed the Black and brown communities here as minorities, but we are actually the majority of this city, and the fact that this neighborhoods and that there's not a way to find it is really heartbreaking. So the story that the person told me is they said, I feel so guilty, I feel so sad, the fact that I live in this unit, this high-rise unit that just came into my neighborhood in the Cedars. They had one form for one candidate in District 2, but he said, because she was talking to me and she was telling me how that the apartments next to us, which are mostly migrant families, which are devastating looking apartments that are older, but they live there, and this is what they call home, that she was so excited over the fact that their company was going to buy and sell and destroy those homes, and not to worry about the people that live there, because they either work for them or they are on month-to-month basis anyways. And it broke my heart to realize again, I already knew it, but to realize that you're pushing out a group of people and they don't even realize the fact that they're about to be displaced. They don't even realize the fact that they're about to lose their entire livelihoods when they're fighting to survive in the city. And that is what historically has happened in the city, and that's what happens now. So how do we fix that? We have to have more visibility, and we have to, I'm the only candidate that came out and said, I am not accepting development funds, I'm not accepting corporate funds. I am one out of 2 candidates in the city that said we are not gonna even take police association funds or endorsements because of the fact that these are things that city council, decisions that are made by city council. So we need to break the connection between those things. There's a way we work together with developers, there's a way we work together to bring those voices to the table, but not in a way where the developer benefits over the people, and where the developers benefit because the developers that are coming in aren't from our neighborhoods, they don't live here. And we are fighting for the lives of the people that are being displaced. We can have revitalization without relocation. It's possible.
Thank you. Jesse Moreno, same question. Do you want me to repeat it?
I'm fine, thank you. One of the things I love most about Dallas is the rich culture in our neighborhoods, the diversity, the history. I live in a home that's over 100 years old. My parents before me fought for the preservation of Dallas. Dallas is such a young city compared to our peer cities, our larger cities. We're a baby when it comes to cities, and we need to preserve the little that we do have, that's character and been here for 100 years. We need to do our best to try to protect that. So when it comes to historic overlays, we need to continue doing that. When we're looking at demolition, the demolition overlays sometimes don't capture all the buildings, and we're erasing a lot of these buildings that have so much passion for the city of Dallas. The way we protect those homes are through our PDs, and the other way is by the repair program. The repair program, where if a senior citizen is investing $1,500 into their home, whether that be their own money, whether that be city money, whether that be grant money, that goes against your property taxes to keep them in those homes, to be able to build generational wealth, so that those grandparents can pass those homes on to their grandchildren to start building a sense of generational wealth. And then we ask our developers to incorporate public art in their new development that's coming in. We ask them to put the history down. As I'm working with the Deep Ellum Foundation, the cultural trail that's going to connect the Arts District to Deep Ellum, reminding people of what was there before, not erasing history, but letting people know what was here before that. And the Oaklawn PD, even though that's only barely touches District 2 and is mainly in District 14, we need to, when there's a new construction plan coming into the area, the city only notifies the residents within 200 feet of a development, and that's whether it's a single-family home or a skyscraper. And so the bigger the project, the bigger the radius needs to be when we're notifying the public to be part of these meetings. And that's why when I was on the park board, all that was required was 1 public meeting. I asked for 2, I asked for 3, I asked for 4 public input meetings to make sure that the residents that were going to be impacted had an opportunity to voice their concerns, to bring up their ideas, and try to come up with a compromise for the developers. Because I also do believe in property owners' rights, that letting them do, when they purchase a building or purchase a piece of land, they also have some rights. So it's a very fine balance between the residents and the developer.
Okay. We are in the home stretch here, and I'm going to make an audible because of timing, and that we're going to give you, instead of 3 minutes, 2 minutes, which is ample time to summarize basically the most important part of being a city council member in your opinion, and to paint a picture for us of what it looks like after you have served for 2 years. So paint that picture of how you served and the most important part of being a council member. We're going to start with, sorry about that, Michael Fetzer.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Can you give me the question one more time?
Okay, the most important part of being a city council member, paint a picture for us in 2 years from now of what the contribution, what you've created, what you've done.
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest characteristics of being a city council member is having a transparency and fiscal responsibility in City Hall. I mean, we have approximately $4 billion budget here in the city of Dallas, and all of the information is out there, public information. It's not very easy to find. It's certainly is not easy to understand, especially if you don't have a business background like myself. And so we need people that know how to financially or physically responsibly spend our tax dollars, and we need to make sure that we are communicating how and where those tax dollars are being spent, because I believe that our taxpayers deserve to know how and where their hard-earned tax dollars are going and feel good about that. Another big equality or important trait would be communication. I currently serve as the Director of Client Services for a healthcare staffing firm, and so, the nice thing about being in that industry is it is all about relationship building and, working with people from different backgrounds to accomplish these things so we can actually start getting things done in City Hall. And so I think that those two things alone translate very well to a council member, and that's something that I do bring to the table. As far as 2 years from down the road, what would I hope to have accomplished or see done differently? If we have retained and hired and have more police officers on our street, and we have reduced our homicide and our crime rate here in Dallas, if that is one of the only things that changed during my tenure as a councilman, that is something I would be proud of.
Thank you. Raha Asadi, now the question is, the most important part of being a city council member, and paint the picture for us what it looks like after you had served for 2 years.
Thank you. So the most important things about being a city council member, and something that I'm really proud to say I've been really shining at in my campaign, are transparency and accessibility. When I graduated from law school in 2017, I made multiple attempts to contact my council member for various reasons. I was wanting to buy a home, so on and so forth. And after several emails, phone calls, voicemails, never once got a call back. It was not until the day after I filed to run for city council that I got a call back, and his response was that he gets too many emails and too many phone calls. He can't respond to them all. As an attorney, if I missed an email that was important enough, I'm facing legal malpractice. So that's not a good excuse for me. So what I've done to actively fight that in my campaign is I created a program called Sunday Night Live, or SNL, where I go on Facebook Live every Sunday night at 8, answer questions from constituents, talk about my campaign, talk about the city, and what I hope to accomplish in city council. And as far as transparency, from day one, from the get-go, I made myself the most transparent candidate, and by that I mean I have the most substantive website where I am transparent and vulnerable, and I give you everything I think about the issues that are plaguing the city, my issues, my priorities, and what I hope to accomplish. No other candidate has the level of transparency that I have, and so many people in the field have told me thank you, because I've done research on all 5 candidates and I don't know anything about any of them but you. So thank you, and you have my support. So it's been it's been beneficial, mutually beneficial, to have that level of transparency. And then in terms of what it looks like 2 years from now, not 7% voter engagement. That is by and large the biggest issue. I have worked, even before I launched my campaign to register voters. I registered over 400 on my own during the presidential election, and that is what I hope comes out of my my candidacy.
Gotcha. Jennifer Cortez, and Jennifer Cortez, I'll say that very clearly, because now I'm mixing up people. We're doing mashups of council prospective members. All right, so most important part of being a city council member, and paint a picture for us what it looks like in 2 years from now after you would have served for 2 years.
So the most important part is definitely representing everyone that lives in the entire 117,000 people, whether they can register or vote or not, whether they are eligible to vote or not, whether they're a migrant or not, whether they have felonies or not, that you represent every single person and bringing those voices to the table. The most important part is being the voice for the community, is being the voice for the people that you represent, and we have lost sight of that. We have lost sight of being public servants. The city has lost sight of being public servants, and that is the most important part of being a city council member, is connecting the community that you represent to City Hall and to the resources and to the connection that they need to survive and to thrive in our city. As far as in 2 years, so Elsie Faye Higgins, who was a former city council member, and she did something called the community, she had a community council So she had people from her, and it didn't matter if you were part of a neighborhood association or you were part of the voting bloc or not, because so many of our working families do not have that luxury of being able to do that because they're working 2 or 3 jobs, but you still were able to learn and be educated, like this is what zoning means, this is what these things mean, so that you can be involved in this system. Again, regardless of whether you're able to register to vote or not, and if you are a voter that you get re-engaged, but it's about having that system of education, having that system to that everything, and that's one of the first things as city council member I plan on doing, is to bring in that board, that collective, that group of community organizations, of community people, of different people from all different walks of life, so that the decisions that I make over who goes on boards and commissions, the decisions that I make over what the next bill is, and these decisions I make, I go to my community group first, just like Elsie Faye Higgins did, bringing that back. And that is what I hope in 2 years to accomplish. And with those voices, changing the conversation and bringing actual change and equity to our policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Jesse Moreno, you're, I'll repeat the question for you.
Fine, thank you.
You got it?
I got it.
Take it.
So as a small business owner and former park board member, I understand the relationships, the accountability, budgeting a multi-million-dollar budget on the park board. And so it's about being accessible to your constituents, to every resident in the city of Dallas, no matter what zip code they come from, no matter what part of the city of Dallas they come from, and getting them involved on boards and commissions, because we can't do this alone. This is a team effort. We need people from every background, from every industry, to make Dallas a better place to live. What I want to see in 2 years is Dallas fully recovered from the COVID pandemic. As a small business owner, I don't want to see shuttered main streets, shuttered Victory Park, Deep Ellum. We want to make sure that we're thriving again and we're a welcoming city for all the residents in District 2.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Sonia Syed, you're going to bring it home for us. And the question again, obviously, is the most important part of being a city council member, and what would it look like in 2 years from now if you had served for 2 years?
So you've been saying my name wrong this whole time.
I've said it right the whole time.
Wrong.
No, wait, really? Okay, say your name. Go.
I thought I'd catch you right at the end. It's Sana like the sun.
Sana.
Yeah. You were really close.
I'm
But I thought I'd give you a hard
embarrassed.
time.
I'm so sorry.
Since
Anyway,
you're all the way at the end. Yeah.
bring it home.
Totally fine. I will help bring it home. Look, when it comes to being a city council member, one of the most important qualities is to understand that it's not all about you. So everything becomes so personal, and I get it, right? Because we put a lot of ourselves into the race, and sometimes it gets really ugly, and it's unfortunate that that happens. But at the end of the day, it's about service to the community, and that's it. So our own personal agendas and legacies, this is the first time in 16 years that this seat has opened up. 16 years is a long time. And I see myself as someone who's able to bring change, but also work with leaders like the ones that you see here at this table who are clearly so passionate and want to make a difference in our community. City Hall has a tendency of creating little fiefdoms. We create these little fiefdoms, and they've destroyed our city because of all these single-member districts, and it's the same power players and their friends and family that continue to fill those seats, and it's hurt our ability to move forward. Now, with that said, I think in 2 years from now, some of the things that I've implemented, these are things that I believe strongly that I have the relationships with City Council from my time working there as a reporter and then also as a spokesperson. I know how to get the votes necessary to push policy through. I have a lot of confidence in Mayor and Council supporting the trauma-informed public safety model and bringing healing to our community and also addressing trauma. I also believe that we can work with the partners who are working in the homeless continuum of care, because they'll tell you we need more help in the mental and psychiatric care front. And I believe in 2 years we can actualize change to see that happen. And in 2 years, it's not going to take a year to get a permit through City Hall. That's beyond unacceptable. It's destroyed our ability to provide affordable housing, residential permits, and it's about working with a sense of urgency and understanding that it's all about service to the community.
Excellent, thank you. I'd like to take a moment and just congratulate all of you for stepping forward. Some people talk about it and some people step in do something about it. And you're all making your time and putting yourself forward for that. So thank you on behalf of the citizens of Dallas and particularly District 2 for stepping forward. We have reached the end of this, I guess, debate it's called, but just to hear your opinions. And in the same breath to reiterate that we have early voting that is active as of today, April 19th till the 27th for early voting. And then the actual election day is May 1st, 2021. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Downtown Residents Council for your attention, and we'll wrap it up at this point. Take care.